President Trump is in Kenosha, Wisconsin today, meeting with law enforcement after the shooting of Jacob Blake.
We have to have our law enforcement. We cherish our law enforcement. We wouldn't be here without our law enforcement. We have to condemn the dangerous anti-police rhetoric. It's getting more and more. It's very unfair. You have some bad apples. We all know that. And those will be taken care of through the system.
NBC News reporter Shaquille Brewster joins me now from Kenosha, Wisconsin. Shaq, tell us, what else did the president say? And also, I'm curious, how was that message received in the room?
Well, it was a relatively quick trip for President Trump, who came to Kenosha this afternoon, and we saw him first tour some businesses that got damaged in some of the looting and rioting that you saw in the early days of the protest. You also saw the president have that roundtable discussion with local law enforcement leaders, having that discussion where you heard him talk there about the looting and the rioting, saying that he wants to restore order to Kenosha, talking about the National Guard presence that he's taking some credit for, that we know that the National Guard, those orders are made by the governor of the state. But you heard the president mention those steps there in his meetings with law enforcement. But you also heard about the assistance that he announced from the federal government. Millions of dollars for businesses available, millions of dollars for law enforcement, a special $42 million grant in grants to state and local law enforcement organizations. So you heard the president make a lot of announcements about what he's planning to do, about what his administration is doing in the wake of the unrest that we saw in Kenosha. What we did not hear from the president, and he was asked about this by several reporters, was the messages that you hear from protesters, like the protesters behind me approaching us right now, the messages that you hear from them calling for an end to systemic racism, calling to police reform. The president not touching on his proposals or whether or not he believes that is something, a serious issue when he was asked. Instead, he wanted to focus on the violence and destruction that we saw from now about a week ago at this point. Savannah?
Now, Shaq, according to the people there that you're talking to, what message does this visit send? How's it being received?
You know, ever since the White House announced this visit, it started on Tuesday, and we might move a little bit. So if you see our camera move, that's why. We're just going to move out of the way of the protesters.
Please do.
But what you heard, yeah, of course. And this is a very peaceful crowd. Let me also make that. We're just going to get out their way so we're not in the way as they're marching down the street. But when the president announced this trip initially, you heard the White House announced it on Saturday, and by Monday or Sunday, excuse me, you had opposition from the governor of this state. You had opposition from the attorney general and the mayor of Kenosha, all saying and expressing concern that, hey, the community still needs more healing. They need more time to healing. Emotions are high. People are very serious about justice that they feel. You hear that from the crowd protesting right now. You hear this from the gentleman here who wants to go, and he says he wants justice for Jacob Blake. And that's the emotion that people have, and the emotion that was concerning some of the leaders when the president announced this trip. You know, the National Guard is still in place here. There's still a curfew that starts in about 3 hours here. And the concern that they had is we saw relatively, the past few nights we saw scenes of peace. We saw protests that were large but peaceful. The concern was that may change with the presidential visit as you draw more people to Kenosha, more people who are still fired up about the original shooting, that happened on Sunday of Jacob Blake. Savannah?
Yeah, Shaq, and it's getting a little bit loud there. We can see people around you, but as you noted, it does look peaceful. Thanks so much for bearing with us through that. President Trump slammed Portland Mayor Ted Wheeler today after 19 people were arrested there following another night of violent unrest.
These radical anarchists were trying to get into the mayor's house, and lots of bad things were happening to this poor, foolish, very stupid mayor. I mean, how he could be mayor, I have no idea. But all he has to do is call, and within 10 minutes, their problem will be over. They had tremendous numbers of people really harassing him horribly, and I guess trying to break into his house. And he still sticks up with him because he's a fool. Only a fool would stick up for him like that.
NBC NBC News correspondent, excuse me, Aaron McLaughlin joins me now from Portland, Oregon. Aaron, so we just hear the president there saying that people were trying to actually get into the mayor's house, break into his house. Talk us through what happened last night, how close it came to that.
Hey, Savannah. Well, last night, a group of protesters marched through the streets of Portland to the Pearl District, where they believed the mayor is living in a condominium complex there. When they arrived, they set fire to a picnic table in the middle of the street. Someone then broke into one of the ground level businesses and set a small fire inside the building with residents of the condominium complex still inside. According to police, it is at that point that they chose to intervene, clashing with the demonstrators, making some 19 arrests in total. Worth noting that the small fire that was set inside the building was quickly extinguished and the situation diffused by the small hours of the morning. Yet another night of unrest here for Portland, and this time an arson investigation is underway as a result of what happened there at that condominium complex.
Now, in addition to those strong words from President Trump about Mayor Ted Wheeler, we're also hearing from acting DHS security Chad Wolf. He sent a letter to Mayor Wheeler today, calling Portland the epicenter of crime and chaos. What else did he say?
Yeah, that's right. That was in response to a letter that Ted Wheeler addressed to President Trump on August 28th following violence that happened here in downtown Portland after a pro-Trump convoy entered the city, clashing with counter demonstrators. He sent a letter to President Trump to complain about that. Chad Wolf responding on the president's behalf, calling on the mayor to request federal intervention. I'll read you part of what the letter said. He said, "There will come a point when state and local officials fail to protect its citizens from violence. The federal government will have no choice but to protect our American citizens." Part of this ongoing war of words between the mayor and the president. They both blame each other for the violence. They're both trading insults on pretty much a daily basis at this point. And it is worth noting that the last time federal government intervened in the situation was earlier in July. There were clashes that were happening outside the federal courthouse here in downtown Portland. The addition of federal agents really did seem to make the situation worse. Savannah.
And finally, Aaron, what are authorities bracing for there tonight? Do you think it's going to be another night of unrest?
That's certainly what authorities are expecting and bracing for at this point. Last night marked the 96th night of unrest here in Portland, and they're expecting another night as well. In fact, they have increased the security presence here in Portland. The governor drafting her own plan to deal with the security situation, sending in the state troops to back up the police. The mayor himself trying to de-escalate the situation, proposing any number of police reforms. But there is a group that is very persistent and continues to be very angry, taking to the streets night after night to protest the situation.
96 nights. That is just really something here in an American city. Thank you so much, Aaron.
Sure.
There's been a dramatic spike in murders across the United States. In Chicago, more than 500 homicides just this year. For a new series, America's Cities, Fact vs. Fiction, NBC News correspondent Tom Costello went to Chicago to see how residents are working to keep their city safe.
Hey, Savannah, good day to you. We're seeing this across the country in cities big and small, this really disturbing increase in homicides. We can tell you that experts say there's really not one single reason for it. There are many reasons for it, and they have been really bubbling and bubbling for years and years. But now the pandemic and the economy are making the situation far worse. It's happening across the country in cities big and small, a dramatic spike in homicides in Los Angeles, New York, in Nashville, in Denver.
It's not okay that this surge in crime is impacting our vulnerable populations.
An 89% increase in Minneapolis, more than 100% in Milwaukee. In Chicago, more than 505 deaths just this year.
We got to be tired of this, because damn it, I'm tired of it.
On July 4th, 7-year-old Natalie Wallace was killed while playing in the front yard as her family prepared to celebrate Independence Day. Police believe she was caught in retaliatory gunfire between gangs. 3 suspects have been arrested.
I mean, it's just like that. Your whole life can change.
Her father, single dad Nathan Wallace, still struggles to talk about it.
She was your little girl.
Yeah, my youngest. To feel like I couldn't protect her, I mean, that'll really hit you, really hurt your soul, you know.
Violent crime is nothing new to Chicago, but this year has been exponentially bad. The number of kids 13 or younger killed in shootings has already surpassed all of last year.
How you doing, sir?
On the south side of Chicago, an army of orange shirts called Target Area walks the streets on a mission to stop violence before it starts in an area suffocating with unemployment, food insecurity, the loss of neighborhood schools, gangs, drugs, and guns. Amplifying all of it, the pandemic. More unemployment, more stress, tension with police, and desperation.
When the coronavirus hit, it hit this community harder than it hit any other community.
Autry Phillips is Target's executive director.
People just don't care about a life anymore. That's important to us. We have to understand that we have to teach our kids.
This summer, the Justice Department's Operation Legend has partnered federal agents with local police across 9 cities to crack down on violent crime, making 1,500 arrests.
These arrests make a difference, and it will make a difference on our violent crime rate overall in Kansas City.
Not to be confused with the federal agents sent to protest zones this summer. While crime and policing have become flashpoints in the presidential campaign, most experts say the violence is not related to demonstrations over racial inequality. And despite the jump in homicides, the nation's crime rate is still down sharply from the 1990s. Still, the pandemic and stalled economy have tensions and tempers running high. For Autry Phillips, progress is measured one person at a time.
If one of us just help one person from getting shot, if one of us just help one person from getting killed, if one of us just help one person to get back in school, to get off drugs, to get into an anger management program, to get an ID.
One concern that these people on the streets have is that as we get into the fall, as the weather gets colder in some of these northern cities, and they can't get outside because it's too cold, that the situation could get worse. People are inside, stuck on top of each other. They've still got the economy they're dealing with, still dealing with COVID, and the situation they fear is ripe for the situation to get even worse.
Hey, NBC News fans, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down here, and click on any of the videos over here to watch the latest interviews, show highlights, and digital exclusives. Thanks for watching.